question might not be what role should economics play, but what sort of economics. Uh, and I think it's very clear we do need a discipline that helps us understand consumers and firms and this cat's cradle of connections that we have between different entities in an economy. We need something to help us navigate all that complexity. I think the problem is that economics has generally tended to simplify, to make an economy, which is a very complex system, to make it tractable, to make it understandable, to make it, to reduce it, in a sense, to a set of equations based on a few assumptions about individuals and about the system as a whole. But in a way, we've lost the complexity with these frameworks because they're too narrow in their construction. We assume that the economy is a closed equilibrium system that will get knocked off track, but will converge back to that equilibrium. Again, like the old classical physics ideas. But the economy isn't like that. It's constantly evolving, changing, reorganizing, and it can break down. It's not that it gets knocked off track and then it just will automatically, through a combination of structural reforms, it won't find its way back to the steady state. It's actually, it can fail, and it can take a long time for it to reorganize and to find a new way of operating and to be resilient to shocks. So these are, to do that, we need a different type of economics to really understand that the economy is a complex system. We need what I call integrative economics. And integrative economics is essentially one that borrows from other disciplines, that does have the rigor and the analytical tools and techniques from the hard sciences, from physics and biology, but also is cognizant of our societies, our histories, our cultures, because all of these things matter. It's not just that we're all individuals who make the same sort of decisions and optimize the same sort of way. All of us are different. And crucially, what traditional economics misses is that we don't make choices in isolation. We actually make a lot of decisions based on groupthink and on what our neighbors are doing, on status anxiety, on keeping up with the Joneses. All these things influence our decisions. So we need a richer framework for decision science, cognitive science, understanding the brain and neuroscience. Because ultimately, a good understanding of economics is all about understanding people. So we need to have those sciences, and we need the humanities. And essentially, good economics has good narratives. And so then we need to understand history, and we need to understand, again, political science. Why do people make certain decisions? Why do they vote in certain ways? How are they influenced by what happens in the economy? This is a lot of disciplines. You can't get this riches, you can't capture it with the frameworks of economics. You need to go much beyond that. So I think economics has its place, but a different form of economics would have an even more important role to play in society by integrating all these different aspects of human beings and society. And that will help us to solve human problems. I don't think the economic frameworks as they are will really help us to do that. So to answer the question, if it's the existing economics, it probably should have much less influence. But if it's a new form of economics, then I think its role is legitimate. And if the objective is still to boost economic growth, then economics gives us a better handle on that issue than many other disciplines, but it's incomplete. It's because economic growth and even markets are not, of course, following natural laws. These are human constructs. So we've built them. These are human-made systems. So we can create the rules, the regulations, the safeguards, the buffers to make these operate in a way which will benefit people and not at the expense of the environment. And these are choices. These are things we can do. So it's not that we need to rely on a very narrow definition of economics, but economics is a way of helping us understand some aspects of these complex systems. Let's look at the results of our economic system. How are we doing? Now, some economists who would defend the existing discipline and approach would say, look at economic growth, look at poverty reduction, which globally has been falling for decades. Look at health improvements. Look at life expectation. It's been growing for centuries, 2 centuries now, in very dramatic ways. And this is spilling over to the whole planet. So obviously something's gone well. And we have an economic system which generates growth. And it's slowed somewhat in the OECD countries, but the emerging economies are still growing very rapidly. And developing countries are starting to expand as well. 6 of the fastest growing countries in the world a few years ago were from Africa. So there is this catch up, and true countries reaching the technological frontier, they've been able to take advantage of these things, and true trade and investment, they've been able to grow. So there must be something good about economics and the way we've proceeded. The problem is exactly the question you mentioned. It's not necessarily about the aggregate. The aggregate story is pretty good. The problem is the distribution. So if 90% of the gains of growth go to the top 1% of the people, then that's going to generate dysfunction and problems in our society. We may have a successful economy. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have a good society and a society that works. I think we've generated a very unequal system, and that's a major problem too for its stability. That the gains of economic growth are captured, and people like Angus Deaton and his wife Anne Case, they've written about, they've tried to understand, why are people so dissatisfied? And they've argued that it's not inequality. We hear a lot about income inequality, and that's been gradually rising in most OECD countries and emerging economies. It's been going down, but inequality is, with Thomas Piketty, has captured a lot of attention. But they argue that it's not necessarily income inequality. Actually, if you ask people, should some people be paid more than others? Should we reward movie stars and sports stars? They'll generally say yes, they probably deserve a bit more. So we don't believe in a totally equal, flat society. But what people don't like is a sense of unfairness. How have certain people become wealthy? And the sense that essentially it's been about rent seeking, that some people have essentially taken advantage of the system. They've exploited the financial markets, which then periodically blow up, causing problems for all of us. They've exploited monopoly power, that their firms have had power to extract rents from an economy. They've exploited their workers, haven't paid them enough. And the sense is that this is really what generates the social problems and the political backlash against our economic system. It's this sense of unfairness, that we don't necessarily have equal opportunities anymore, and that those who are born with a set of advantages will be able to augment those over the life course, and those that are born into disadvantage, again, that will factor into going to a worse school, having a poorer diet, having health which is not as good. We estimated in the OECD that inequalities were reducing the lifespans of the poorest people in the distribution by about 10 years. So this is a real issue. And the question is why? Why have we a system which is generating this unfairness? And I think it's partly because we have tried to make economic growth central. And the dominant ideas around growth are basically that we should take away frictions. We should make the market mechanism work better. So we should make everything very flexible in the labor market. How do we do that? Well, just get rid of minimum wages or reduce them so that they don't introduce rigidities. Make everything very competitive. So if a firm is what we would consider low productivity, that should go to the wall. But of course, if you have a system that is about making everything very efficient, it might not necessarily be leading to good income for a lot of outcomes for a lot of people. And so we shouldn't judge the success of an economy by the efficiency of the market. That's way too narrow, and that can be generating a lot of problems. If we look at lagging regions, for example, and lagging firms, the standard economic policy advice is that, well, you should just reallocate resources. So people should move from poorer regions to richer ones, and then the market mechanism will sort things out. But if we think about people as a bit more complex than ones that just respond to prices and wages, then people actually have good reasons why they don't want to move to different regions. They don't want to reskill. If you're working in a coal mine or in a job that is automated away, it's very difficult to reskill and to generate a new set of skills if you're in your 50s. So the economic idea that the market can reallocate resources to their most efficient purpose, it leaves a lot of people behind. And then the political economy is that we often have the issue of power. So how we design antitrust policies when the big monopoly power has a way of influencing the type of regulations we put in place. Look at the way that the financial system has been regulated. Why do we tolerate a system that generates enormous liabilities for the public, while the benefits of the financial system are mostly captured by the participants of the market itself? This doesn't seem to be a very fair system. So we decided, we organize our economies these ways. We try to optimize them, we try to grow, we try to make them efficient, and we gesture in the direction of things like fairness. So we say things like early childhood education and more progressivity in the tax and benefit system. And these are all very good, but these are very incremental, and they're not going to make a huge impact because it's the systemic unfairness that we have. And so we need to not try and just fix up the machine and make it run a bit better for more people. It takes a much more systemic overhaul of the way we think about the economy, how it works, and the policies then that serve that understanding.